I want people to hear my voice. And just forget their troubles for 5 minutes.
The story of Amy Winehouse is a really sad one. The music biopic formula being what it is, Back to Black might not be the best vehicle to get that across. Taking a highly publicised life and condensing it into a narratively straightforward package is always difficult. For Winehouse, it's probably impossible. Her very public struggles with fame and addiction have become the stuff of pop culture legend. Skyrocketing onto the stage with her 2003 debut album, Frank, she almost instantly earned her reputation as one of the finest vocal and songwriting talents of her generation. A turbulent relationship with alcohol, drugs, and her husband attracted the camera flashes of the tabloid press. He went to prison and she went to rehab. She died of alcohol poisoning after a relapse, aged 27. That's the story that Sam Taylor Johnson's film attempts to tell as well. It attempts it because, while the structure might be largely true to life, moment to moment it consistently fails to capture the sparkle behind the headlines. The idea that Winehouse was someone who lived life to the full is the sort of sentiment associated with a stately shake of the head at a dinner party. It feels like it cheapens a life filled as much with pain and self-destruction as musical brilliance. But in the popular imagination, she was undeniably a force of nature. The one thing a successful biopic about her life can't be is boring. Unfortunately, this primary colours portrait feels reluctant to dive into the weeds of either its protagonist or the people around her. Amy is told, "You're too fucked up for me," but we're rarely shown it. Instead, the brightly lit and curiously empty pubs she spends an inordinate amount of time in are used to telegraph a gradual descent into a slightly messy coffee table. Despite the 15 rating in the UK and an R rating in the States, Back to Black feels sanitized to a degree that robs the story of almost all its value. Of course, a certain reticence on the filmmaker's behalf is understandable. Unlike other notable music biopics in recent years, this one was made without the express creative input of the Winehouse estate, and while this theoretically gave the team permission to delve where protectors of Amy's legacy might rather they didn't, they seem instead to have tiptoed around topics which could raise the spectre of exploitation over their heads. But then, the whole exercise feels exploitative anyway. The process of taking a dead woman's image and rebuilding it into a feature film when overexposure almost certainly played a role in her death was never going to be anything else. The only defense would be to make something truthful, something which shows that Taylor Johnson and screenwriter Matt Greenhalgh understand what Amy Winehouse means in the popular imagination. Instead, her story's been packaged into the most by-the-numbers biopic template imaginable. The script is packed with melodramatic cliches which rub especially painfully next to Winehouse's cheekily transgressive lyrics, and even the camera feels well-behaved, content to sit quietly in a mid-shot while Amy's life falls apart in front of it. Perhaps most unforgivably, though, is the framing of the whole tale as a love story between the singer and her husband, Blake Fielder Civil. Jack O'Connell feels horribly miscast from the off, parodying a Cockney accent and an Oasis haircut like a less charming version of Peep Show's Superhands. His interactions with Abella's Amy are self-conscious and often embarrassing. Not only does he never seem like he actually likes her, it's impossible to imagine how she could even think he likes her, which makes the relationship's centrality to the whole story seem ridiculous. Not that Fielder Civil is even cast as the villain of the piece. Neither is Amy's father, Mitch, played by Eddie Marsan, although the two have been publicly scrutinized for years following Winehouse's death. The impulse not to turn Back to Black into a blame game is an honourable one, but there is a difference between refusing to attribute blame to one party and refusing to attribute it at all. Whether it's Mitch, Blake, the paparazzi, media, the management, or even Amy herself, the story refuses to pin fault at anyone's door. A tragic story for which we all collectively can assume some responsibility is shown to be no one's responsibility. That hand-washing isn't just dramatically dissatisfying, it feels oddly immoral. The film does get one very important piece of the puzzle right, though. Marissa Abella is fantastic. Warm, vulnerable, gobby and charming, she carries off an iconic style that's difficult to wear without looking parodic. She sings all Winehouse's songs herself, and bloody hell, she can sing. The few times the camera sits and watches her performing in all her glory are far and away the best moments of the film. There might be a lot of things wrong with the movie, but she isn't one of them. But in the end, I really, truly wish Back to Black hadn't been made. That such an obvious Icarus-like story seemed so ripe for reconstruction is exactly the reason no one should have gone anywhere near it. Thrusting an oversimplified narrative onto a woman whose life was defined by the stories we told about her feels like a betrayal. That Abella delivers a star-making performance so early in her career in a vehicle so undeserving of it only compounds the misery. That a film so technically fine is about to fall victim to the kind of scrutiny it simply won't be able to survive just compounds it further. The story of Back to Black was always going to be a tragedy. In the end, though, it's just sad.